Night Watchman. How are
DJ
you, sir?
LeRoy. I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Another week.
Yes.
Another week.
Yes, it's
So,
getting closer and closer to Christmas.
yes, indeed. And I know that you have started your shopping already. I've seen you in the aisles, picking out this and that.
You see me in the Amazon aisles, you mean?
Indeed, indeed. Jeff Bezos is very, very pleased at you. That's for sure. Oh, man.
But not you, Mr. Prime.
Oh, good one, good one. Well, needless to say, Night Watchman, we started off last week with Saul Kent, one of the unsung heroes. And what did we talk? We said that educators are the unsung heroes.
Mm-hmm. So we want to sing a little bit for him today, right?
Yes, you know it. So we definitely want to bring out, a group of unsung heroes who've been, as they say, in the trenches, doing the things. We'll even talk about the monumental announcement yesterday. And hey, I guess without further ado, we should maybe, what do you say, bring them out, huh?
Mm-hmm. You mean last week, right?
Thank you, Night Watchman. You're always right on it. So I guess you know what. This first educator is over like 40 years doing this. Okay, 40 years doing working with young people, being an educator and administrator, all of those particular things. This can only be. I'll let her tell her story. Dr. Sandye Johnson, bring her out. Hey, Dr. Johnson, how are you? You're on mute. There you go.
It's so good to be here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. And you know what? Literally, I got to say, Night Watchman, next one, literally, I'm almost going to call him like a type of a Renaissance man, He's done it all, but he's been, educator, administrator. He's been all over the place and a mentor, a consultant in that space of education. And that is none other than Dr. Stanley Mims. Doctor!
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
How's everyone today?
Oh, we're excellent, man. All right. Next, we have actually someone who I've known for, it seems like for quite a while, and I just have been impressed with her fortitude and literally her dedication in the education space. Now, we actually lost her, and when I say lost her from New York City, but she tells me that she's in New York City quite often. So we'll also hear about that. But we lost her to Rochester, upstate New York. And as you said, Night Watchman, those winters are cold, right? So having said that, let's bring out Dr. Shelley Jallow. Shelley!
Good day to everyone. Thank you.
Absolutely. And a Night Watchman, it would not be complete, especially as we know how family is, if I did not have and make sure that this one particular one who's not only being a teacher, a administrator, but also now having changed her career slightly and actually being in charge of, let's say, educational products, that can only be Debra Denise Harper. Bring her out. Oh, Miss Harper, you're on mute. There you go.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing swell, thank you.
Beautiful. So you know what? As I told everybody, this is not going to be Mike Wallace Gotcha. This is going to be literally talking about your journey. And that's what I'm most interested in hearing in terms of going into the education space and why your dedication, why also seeing some of the, inequities that exist especially in urban communities. I want to hear how it all began for you. Dr. Johnson, please do tell.
Yes. Just to give a little background, I grew up in Central Harlem, and my parents didn't send me to school in the community that I lived in. As a matter of fact, most of the families looked for schools outside of our community to send their children to. And I always wondered why, why can't I go in the community that I live in? And I had to travel sometime an hour and a half in order to get to junior high and high school. And I did not go to a public school in the elementary grades. And so when I graduated from high school, went to Morgan and figured out what I wanted to study, I wanted to do something to help children who are struggling. I was a struggling high school student. People laugh. If you look at my high school transcript, you would never think I would make it to Columbia University to get a doctorate,
Wow.
But it clearly was the environment and the support that I got at Morgan State University that drove me into my passion for education. So when I came home, I worked with special ed kids, severely emotionally disturbed, for about 20 years in District 75. And then I was given the opportunity to be part of a planning team from Abyssinian Baptist Church that was developing a blueprint for a school in Central Harlem that would deliver better educational services to the families that surround the church. This was part of the New Visions effort in the early 90s. And so I was one of the founding members of Thurgood Marshall Academy for social change. And I stood in the background in working in moving educational opportunities for kids. But in the fourth year of the school, we had a different principal every year. The school was getting ready to close. They said it was one of the worst schools they'd ever seen. And Reverend Butts asked for one more chance. Let's give it one more chance. And he asked me to take over the school. I never wanted to be a principal. Really, I never wanted to be. I was in a very comfy teaching position in a nice area. It was just very convenient for me. I was in my comfort zone. But I always remember the quote by Dr. Martin Luther King, that the measure of a man or a woman is not where they stand in times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. So I stepped out of my comfort zone, never been an administrator, just, worked with my community and my church family, and we were able to turn that school around. So it's really not about the kids, it's what we can provide for them. So even when I retired, I started a 501c3 to support the schools in my district, because I really feel our district has been treated as a stepchild, and we need to come together to make sure our kids have the same opportunities that I was able to get and achieve my goals.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Mims, Renaissance man, do tell.
Well, it's I'm in listening to Sandye's journey. It parallels mine, and it I would say it follows that path. I grew up in Atlanta. I'm a product of Atlanta public schools, and during the segregated schools era. I'm not telling on myself my age, but it was a journey. I really experienced and enjoyed the schooling I got at my high school, my elementary school, my middle, my high school. And I think that was key to me becoming an educator. I attended Oakwood College, which is now Oakwood University. And I tell you, the energy or the reinforcement I received there was pivotal to launching me to where I am now. Many times in schools, we don't know where we're going to end up. We get these majors. I look at my grandson now, who's at Oakwood, following my path in terms of choice of colleges and universities. And he says, Papa, I'm going to do this major. And I just listened. I don't discourage. Now, don't pull out the light.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to major in this area. I'm like, go ahead. You got this. You got this. But I know along the way, and many of us can say that, we'll pivot to our comfort zone and move accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
coming, that in mind, I became my senior year of high school. I changed majors, guys. I was majoring in religion. I was going to be a Seventh-day Adventist preacher. And then I had this one class with one of my favorite instructor, who it was method in teaching social studies. I took that class, loved it. That she got me a gig out in one of the high schools, public schools in Huntsville, to be a mentor in a school that was below the poverty line. And I got in that classroom and I said, the aha moment hit. This is where my new ministry is.
Mm-hmm.
And Sandye, like you, I started down the path of being a special ed teacher, because the class that I was given, these were students who had been weighed in the balances and found wanting instructionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I just gravitated that to like a moth to a flame, but with the assurance that I can make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history. I became a teacher, an assistant principal, superintendent, and now I'm mentoring students that I've had the privilege of serving as their administrators when they were in middle and high school, and now they're adults, and I'm mentoring them to their next level, taking them to new heights and being that listening ear that they can lean in and say, now we go by Stanley now. I said, you're not going to call me doctor. That's too dating. They lean and say, what do you think about this? How should I pivot in this direction in this pandemic era? And that's the refreshing piece that keeps me anchored in what I'm doing. And it constantly reinforces that I'm glad that I'm an instrument of God to do this work on this earth.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Mims. But Dr. Mims, I thought we had Brown versus Board of Education 54, and you say there's still segregation? I didn't know.
That was there.
Gotcha. Dr. Jallow, do tell.
Oh, wow. My beginnings are not in education. Education is a second career. I started in real estate, actually. Like Dr. Johnson and Dr. Mims, I went to non-public schools, not in my neighborhood as a child, and didn't go to public school until I went to Bronx Science, and that required a considerable amount of travel to get to that school. And went to Syracuse for engineering and Howard for business, and thought that I
Wow.
would pursue a career in business.
Mm.
And actually went to work for my family in real estate, and becoming a salesperson and a broker, helping clients figure out their finances and helping my colleagues, fellow real estate agents and brokers figure out things like commissions and interests and payments and so forth and so on. And realizing that so many people did not understand mathematics or how to use mathematics in their daily lives to make decisions. And then one of the people on this panel convinced me that I should think about teaching. And so I rejected that notion for quite some time, and then just actually dabbled in it, teaching in the high school on Saturdays, SAT prep. And I think that's where I got the bug that this could be a career choice that I should take seriously and really pursue. And then really, the rest is history. My roots are really in mathematics instruction, because I always felt that for our people in particular, that was an area where we were not demonstrating proficiency, where we were being taken advantage of because we didn't have the math capacity that we needed always to make the best decisions. And people were making a lot of assumptions about our capacity to perform. in those areas of math and science and tech.
Exactly.
And so, one thing led to the other. I worked in a district and scores. To be honest with you, I was working in a classroom as a math teacher, and the chancellor came into my classroom. I think I was on the job for a couple of months. And I was so nervous. And I thought either I'm going to stand there in fear or I'm going to include the chancellor and his entourage in my class. That's what I did. And the kids learned, I learned, the chancellor learned, and the next thing you know, I was being asked more and more often to come out of the classroom and assume administrative responsibilities. And it became a time where I had to make a decision where I'm going to continue to be a teacher or jump into the realms of being an administrator, and decided to make that jump. And just went from district to district in New York City, a few districts in Harlem, and districts in the South Bronx, and then started just venturing out to places like Connecticut and Maryland and New Jersey and New Orleans, and so in various positions from teacher to director to assistant soup, deputy soup, principal.
Wow.
And to where I am now as a state monitor for one of the districts in the state. So that's kind of a trajectory, not necessarily planned, but kind of fell into it and found that it was good for me and aligned with my advocacy for my folks, my people, through education.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Jallow. Ms. Harper, do tell. Tell us your journey, because now I know that you're on another side of the educational spectrum in terms of sales of educational items and products. Tell us.
Well, my journey is similar to most of the my comrades on this panel. I did not go to schools in my neighborhood. I was one of the first in busing. So I went to school out of my neighborhood, which, sometimes required, if you missed that daggone school bus, as a child in second grade, you had to take the train. And that train was, from the South Bronx, an hour by myself all the way to like what was like Gun Hill Road then. And so I was bused to school a lot. I had a great school experience, whether elementary school, middle school, and also high school. Again, like Dr. Jallow, education was not my first choice. It was my second career. Actually, I worked in real estate, and sort of we worked together. Something came over me and decided, maybe you should teach. The thing about that was my mom worked within New York City public schools, and constantly for years and years, she said, well, you should go and teach. And I just, for like 13 years of her career, just ignored that. So I figured, I'm in real estate, was doing well, but let me see what this education forum is about. Plus, at that time, I was like, oh, you get summers off. So that was really my pull in the beginning. I went to fashion high school. So my degree was in design and marketing. I thought I was going to be the next Calvin Klein, female Calvin Klein. Went to FIT and got a degree in sales and marketing, and then started teaching New York City public schools after real estate. That first year, I taught careers in the South Bronx, and then I became a literacy teacher. I went back to school to Lehman to get my master's in reading. And in 1 year, the light bulb came on. And it was like, I love teaching. It became so easy. And I don't know why, but my classroom management skills, just really listening to the students, teaching the students, and the administrators that I was engaged in saw something in me that probably I did not see in myself because I was new to teaching. 2 years after being in the classroom, I was taken out of the classroom and was given a job to teach other teachers how to teach as a professional developer. From there, I've had many jobs, like a director of technology. And then I actually worked under Dr. Stanley Mims. He came in as a principal, worked with him, and probably about 3 months into him coming, he called and said, "You need to get out the classroom. I know you're doing great work there." And I was really reluctant. I'm like, can I teach my class still? And he was like, no. So I became his AP. He mentored me for many years. And then he said, you need to be on the other side, because I always was judging, what we have in these schools, the books, the assessments. Do they really match the culture of our students? And he set up a meeting, and thus my career jumped into educational publishing, where I was able to then direct the whole sales force, but also choose the companies that I wanted to work for, whose products really mirrored our children, not just selling them anything. And I knew that in those kinds of positions that I can make sure that all of our districts within New York City, I was making sure that they were getting quality materials. If those materials did not fit, those are not what I sold them, although we had that in our book bag. So it was very interesting how I moved, my literacy career to the technology and engaged that in the early 90s in order to really move the needle. And all of this that I've done in education really gave me the insight when I moved to educational publishing or educational sales, especially today, talking in this virtual world and looking at technology and assessments. And, we have these summative assessments, but do those summative assessments really speak to our kids? We have programs like Smart Thinking, which is online tutoring, which is really necessary in this virtual world. Things like Transcend, which now, yes, it's an assessment, but we need to start assessing the kids from where they are right now and what they've learned last week. Okay. So all of this engagement, that's what led me to education. I've never been out of education. Everything I've done thus far for the past probably 30 years has been really aligned to students of color, especially boys, who I think when we talk about reading literacy, and Dr. Jallow was talking about math, if you don't know how to read, you sort of act up and become in that behavioral setting. So my whole gear is to make sure that especially our young men are heard, saw, and listened to, and that they have great teachers like we all had, obviously, that's on the stage today, this evening. And that's my journey.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. So this particular stuff that I'm going to throw out there, I'm going to throw out there some ideas, concepts, or mysteries, let's say. But Dr. Mims, you mentioned segregated schools. One would argue that since Brown versus Board of Education, school systems have become more segregated. Anybody, weigh in on that, please. Let me know. And when I say that, I'm talking about not only, let's say, the demographics, but also how resources are allocated. Anybody comment, please?
Well, I'll jump in and say absolutely. More segregated today than ever before. And the segregation is not just, the students that are destined to go to particular schools because of their zip code or because of the neighborhoods that they're living in. But we have to look beyond that. That is definitely important. But looking at the funding and how that is segregated and how that impact, it's like a vicious cycle of what came first. But that funding and how these funding formulas are created and supported and sustained by communities that surround other communities to make sure that they stay segregated is definitely a area of study, advocacy, and anything that anybody can do about it. Because right now you have pockets of schools that are struggling, and it looks like it's the kids' fault when in fact there are many other factors that are impacting their ability to get a quality education in a integrated setting, or even in a segregated setting, that it's impacting their ability to get a quality education. And oftentimes we're not talking about that or unpacking that to address those issues.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Dr. Johnson, tell.
I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Jallow, but I want to take it even one step further with a little story that I have. I was teaching in Harlem, and it was right around the corner from where I lived. And I had a lot of books one day. I had a lot of baggage I was carrying. So one of my students asked, did I need any help? And I said, sure, come walk with me. And as we were walking, and I'm talking, and I don't hear any response. So I look back, and the student is stopped at the bus stop. So I said, what are you doing there? He says, aren't you going to catch the bus to where you live? I said, I live right around the corner. He said, you live right around the corner? You live in my neighborhood? And so to me, that meant that he felt someone who was a professional, a teacher, couldn't live in his community. And that really blew my mind, because my father shined shoes, and that's how he sent me to school. So I think this segregation is not only in resources, but it has segregated our thinking and our mindset, and it's created a sense of hopelessness and despair. And we need to change that around and bring a culture of trust and support. And the only way I think I was successful as a leader is community partners have to be involved. Parents have to be involved. The parents who who may give you a hard time versus not, it doesn't matter. Everyone has to be at the table to feel that they're part of it and to lift us up out of this rabbit hole that we've been in. I know my district for 70 years. We have the highest number of charter schools in our district and the most evident gentrification in our community, but no one is investing in our public education. None of the corporate people who are moving in are investing in the schools. And most of the people moving in do not send their kids to the local school. So we got to change that mindset, because public school at one time did work, right? It did work. Didn't Bloomberg go to public school and all the others? I mean, it did work. So why can't it work now for us?
Gotcha. Dr. Mims, thoughts?
To that point, to both of Dr. Shallows and Dr. Jallow and Dr. Johnson point, you see the divide more clearly in this pandemic. I move freely throughout the country, engaging in conversation with school leaders about the challenges they're facing. Yes, they have tons of money that's been given to them, but still they have to figure out how do they retool their teachers to be engaging with their students. Back in September, I conducted a Zoom training for 20 principals in the Atlanta area, and it was on how do you use data to make informed decision. And Dr. Jallow, who is a champion of that, knows it's very important. You got to use data to make informed decisions. And the key thing they were concerned with is now they're back in. Are they going to be penalized for the scores the kids didn't achieve before the pandemic or during the pandemic? I'm like, what? Is that what you're thinking about? There's a higher thought there. So getting them to get out of being shell shocked, getting them to realize the messaging is still clear that student achievement is number one for all children. a couple of principals I was working with had large populations of exceptional children. Okay, special education. They were trying to to assess how do they bring in the services now, because they know their children have missed services during the pandemic. So who do they go and pull together, Curtis, to help make this a realization for their children? Because they know the lawsuits were looming in the wind, because there are timelines when it comes, and all of us know, once a child is identified, you have so many days to move that information along, and the boxes must be ticked. If not, there's penalty to be paid. So we've got to figure out, how do we move principals to realize that uh, you're still in charge, but you've got to put in a community of people, as all of our the Shelley and Dr. Johnson has said. I know that Debra's going to echo the same thing. We got to pull together now. Principals can't do this work alone. It takes truly the cliche. It takes a village to get this work going now.
Doc, I absolutely knew that you would say that for sure. And speaking about educational products and whatnot, so I'm sure, Debra, because we have certainly seen these contentious school board meetings. So I guess, do your products include CRT?
Well, that's another thing. Looking at, I was reading some research on in Ed Week, and a lot of the educational arenas are staying away from it. And I think the reason why they are is because they don't understand it. There's a lot of confusion around it. It's easy to research and really read about what CRT really consists of.
Well, quick question on that, Debra. So, because my understanding is that it is not taught in elementary education, or for that matter, high school. So tell me. Okay, so go ahead.
Exactly. And it has come to this portion where now they're trying to move books off the shelf. They're trying to do a whole lot of that. And so it goes back to when we talk about segregation, to me, it's the same thing. And this is what's going on in most of the states. I mean, it is a scary thought for I'll use a new word, powerism. And so when you're thinking about now trying to empower the class that you thought should be unempowered, and you took that away with several things, economic lines, when you're talking about voting lines and all of those things. And now we're trying to bring that back in a different sense. That's not really, that is going to take time. So when we talk about CRT, that's going to take time. But the thing about it is, what I want to say is, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I live in a neighborhood that is primarily $500,000 $1 million homes across. Our schools are the lowest performing. There are no businesses in our neighborhood that reflect brown and Black children. They just opened up something called Black Wall Street. And I think, Curtis, when you came to Georgia, you saw this new Black Wall Street that gave the community a voice to then be able to be entrepreneurs, small businesses. So all of these children around here can see, not only can you have houses like this, but you can have your own business. And so the thing about it is, yes, you can have your own business, but how do you get the education? And because the state of Georgia is in the lowest performing, what do? How do we retrain our teachers? How do we retrain our principals? How do we retrain some of our superintendents that have never been principals? So I think you need to come up the ranks. You need to really be the leader within your school building. You need to meet with vendors that you believe in and that believe in what you're doing, in your mission and your vision for your kids, and where you are culturally. And so when you don't have all of that together, plus some other things, parents, like it says, it takes a village. We are not on this island by ourselves. We need to employ teachers that look like us. We need to train teachers that don't look like us to be better teachers and to understand the students that they're teaching. And so that's what I have to say about it all.
Yeah, that's a good point, because certainly last week at NightWatchman, you were there in terms of, we had a Saul Kent, a Jewish educator, 91 years old. So he actually witnessed the whole Brown versus Board of Education decision, all those particular key things. So I am hearing, is it important that young people see educators who look like them? Is that vitally important? Or I also heard in your statement, Debra, that also teaching the Black and Brown professionals who have to work with Black and Brown kids to be better at what they do. Which is more important? Which is the thing that we need to actually focus on? Anyone?
Can I, before you say that, can I also say something about, because you brought up the critical race theory issue, and I just want us to just quickly say it's really about an attack on the teaching of accurate Black history, and that is something that everyone needs. And so it's not just an issue about our community, it's an issue about this country addressing real history. And I bring, for example, we finally see people talking about the Tulsa massacres in popular media. It really, this Watchmen series that Regina King was in, it was the first time that I'd ever seen it portrayed on screen, and it created a cascade effect where there's an acknowledgement of this. But we've seen the continual erasing of Black history, and right now, as Debra mentioned, this whole powerism and drive to literally turn the calendar and clock back has reached a proportion that we didn't expect to see at this stage in our life, that we're going backwards instead of forwards. So I want us to make sure that we don't just talk in the code, because critical race theory is not about what critical race theory is. It's just about a boogeyman to say, hey, we don't want that in our schools. What is it you don't want? We don't want the teaching of Black history. So,
and NightWatchman, I would say accurate American history.
Okay, accurate American history.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so anyone, please, on the last thing that I had mentioned, just jump in terms of literally where we can go now in this particular paradigm. I heard you, Dr. Johnson, also mention about charter schools, right? Because and the influx. Should there be a cap on them, or where there is a need, maybe more charter schools in development? Please, someone.
First of all, I don't think there should be a competition between schools. I think all schools should have the same resources and the same opportunities, and that parents have a choice of where they want to go. It's unfortunate that our district has the most charter schools per square feet across the country, which impacts public funding for the public schools, because the population is declining and they're not getting an increase in resources. So imagine if a child walks in a school building, a public school building, on the second floor there's a public school, and on the third floor there's a charter school. They physically look different. They have more up-to-date equipment, it's brighter colors, it's beautiful photos, it's all these things, and our kids see that. And it only reinforces a tale of two cities, right? We are the have-nots and they are the haves. And so we have to eliminate that. Everyone, sometimes we get caught in a rabbit hole, charter versus public. Okay, there is an issue there, but the bigger issue is creating equity across the landscape. And this is my feeling. If there were equitable resources in 1954 in the Black community that was equal to the white community, there may not have been a Brown versus Board of Ed, because it was about resources. It was about resources. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hop in on that. I don't like the charter versus non-charter discussion as well. I think it's resources versus not having resources. Because if the public schools were resourced appropriately in these urban centers, they would be able to offer the type of programming and services that families want and are not seeking in other places. They're seeking it in other places because the resources are lacking in their public schools. So they try to seek it in other places. So that's why you have the growth of charter. If you're going to have a charter debate, it might be around whether you want maturation, too many charters in one place versus having charters at all. But you notice that charters are appearing in the very same urban centers that are under-resourced. And so that's not by coincidence, right? So it gets back to, how are you allocating funds as a state to your urban communities or to your communities that service predominantly Black and Brown students. And so, I do think that's a real issue. And I get a little concerned when I see people of color getting caught up in that fight of charter, no charter. It's a question of choice. You have as many choices as anybody else. It's just that in other communities, their schools are highly resourced, so they don't need to make that choice. Everything they need is in their neighborhood school down the street, and many other people don't have those same advantages when they make decisions for their children and the education they're trying to provide for their children.
And I can also state another avenue is writing grants. When we were at our school with Dr. Mims and Dr. Jallow, we wrote a lot of grants. Not only did we write a lot of grants, Dr. Mims had a lot of community involved. Every Friday, they used to throw away bread. And I remember every Friday, anyone could come downstairs and get bread. Kids, teachers, whoever needed it, parents, okay? We had a school that before Dr. Mims came in, or Stan came in, I'll call him Stan, we had a lot of teacher absentees. There were teachers that called in all the time. They had tenure, they called in sick half the time. After he came in and led that school, our absenteeism went down dramatically. Not only did the absenteeism go down, the teachers, their passion came back. They were teaching, we were writing grants, we were making sure that we got those resources. Okay, you want to keep us out of the resources and funding, but we're going to find a way to get it. And we got it. Okay, with those, I wrote one grant was for $55,000, the other one was for $70,000. Got them both. Okay, use that to enhance programs within the school, the drama program, after school program for girls, teaching them how to take apart and build their own computers. I mean, those are the kinds of things that if we don't have those kinds of funding, that we need to take those ropes upon ourselves. Even though we know that we should be getting that portion, we cannot just consistently sit back and wait for that to be given to us, because we know the way that this economic system is created and the funding system and the formulas are created, that our chances of getting equitable resources are still on the decline. So sometimes we need to take the horse, what they say, the ring, but and do it ourselves.
Curtis,
Gotcha.
Can I go back to one question that you asked? Do you mind?
Yes, go ahead.
About the teachers, whether you need a teacher or color.
Thank you.
I want to go back because I want to, lift the idea that we as a community have to lift up the profession and convince young people that education and careers in education is a valuable, respectable profession for them to pursue. And when I work with a lot of high school students now. When you ask them what you want to major in or what you want to study, education doesn't appear on their list. The idea of being a teacher is not part of their narrative when they start even considering. So I think we have to lift up the profession and create nice pathways for people of color in particular, people who don't speak English as their first language in particular, to pursue that as a career choice, and pathways at the college level and at districts and charter schools for people to pursue this profession, and do something about the debt that they may take on in order to earn the certifications to stand before children and teach. I think that's important. It's not just Black men we need in front of these students. We need every aspect of the diaspora in front of these students, if you're going to talk about really presenting the curriculum in a way that's robust and appeals to all the students we're serving.
Excellent. I guess you know what? Hey, the elephant in the room being, oh my God, there will be new leadership as a chancellor in New York City. I want to hear the thoughts, please. Dr. Mims, go ahead.
I had a chance to see the whole program. I call it a ceremony of a new beginning on spectrum of New York One, and to see someone that you've known and his work. I had to know his work and know what he stands for, that he's not giving lip service. And I like the part that he said, y'all, I have to use my Southern accent expression. Y'all, I like the way he said, I didn't come looking for a job. I came to do a job. When David said that, it went throughout the land. Because he's telling you, I'm not looking for a handout. I know me. I know what I can do. He's coming to do a job that is so essentially needed. The messaging was clear. And Sandye, you were there. Dr. Johnson, you were there. You heard it. And this is what we need. And I put on my LinkedIn message that he has come to the kingdom for such a time as this, barring a passage from the scriptures, because this is where we need him now to change the conversation, the narrative, get the traction needed that's going to take New York City schools to new heights. And I know his work at Eagle Academy. I've taken teachers, students from when I was working out in the Midwest in Illinois to visit the work there at Eagle Academy. And those principals came back and said, oh, we need to put this secret sauce in our schools. Mm-hmm. So I feel positive that we will rise.
Mm-hmm. Well, beautiful. Dr. Johnson, because you told me you were meeting with him before this announcement.
Oh, yeah. Well, David and I, we were principals around the same time. We had reached out to each other. So I've known him, for a long time. But I was just so ecstatic about yesterday. I felt like it was Obama winning the presidential election again. I mean, because I've been under about 7 chancellors, 7. There has been no chancellor in the Board of Ed history who has won both going to a public school, worked as a teacher in the public school system, became an assistant principal, and understands all the trenches. David understands, what we have to do, because sometimes the DOE lays out this grand framework, not understanding what it takes to implement. He knows what it takes. We just have to make sure that the people that are around him and that the people who support him continue to support, even when something doesn't go right. We can't go out in public and run the tractor trailer over him. We got to stand behind him every mistake is a learning experience, as we all know as principals and leaders. You're going to make mistakes, but don't bash him, and he's not going to make a transformation in 24 hours. It's a process. So we got to stand behind him. We got to applaud him and not let those other, take him down. So I'm excited. The crowd was, even in COVID, there was about over 200 people there.
Wow.
And it was just, and the kids that saw him, they were just like, they felt real special.
Beautiful.
It was just a special day. So I hope, and no, I'm not going to say I hope, I know that David will be able to turn it around. He's very strategic. Just what I loved his other comment, Stanley. People think they know David, but they really don't. Because people are saying, "Oh, I know David. He got my back." No, he only has the back of the children and the families to make sure that they get the right services. So I'm on board. I didn't mind getting up at 4:30 in the morning, not in Brooklyn, because it was an historic moment. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I gotta ask another little question. This is a little sidebar. Because Shelley, you went to Bronx High School of Science.
Yes, sir.
And we do see under this current administration that the mayor has done away with the test. I'd like to hear some thoughts. Is it good to do away with the test, or might it be better to prepare our people, Black and brown kids, to be ready for that test? That's one. And then two, what does the test really truly show? That you're very good at taking a test, or your success at a school like Science? Somebody weigh in and let me know about these standardized tests.
Oh my goodness! See, I thought the show was going to be a short show. I see you want to start some trouble. I'm gonna respond first as Shelley, who didn't want to go to Science, but my father made me go to Science, and I went to Science. And the first 6 months, he had to drive me to Science every morning to make sure I showed up. So that person, really worked hard to get into Science. I mean, studied, and make sure I had good grades. Not understand I was going to go to Science, but because that was something that I was going to do in terms of being a good student. So to hear that you're going to suddenly disband it, Shelley, the little girl, is like, what? Why do it now? You should have done it for me back then, right? Now the professional Shelley says, listen, we got to look at how children get into this school, but more importantly, why do so few children who look like me are able to get into the school? What systemically is happening or not happening that prevents children from being to choose not just Science, any school that they want to go to? The whole idea of education for me is not so much that you go here or there, but that you have choices. I want you to walk out of 8th grade or walk out of 12th grade, and your biggest problem is, I don't know what I want to do next. I have so many opportunities. I don't know what I want to do next, right? And so this whole idea of the test, is it unfair that it's given one day, a moment in time, and if you don't perform in that moment in time, they make a determination whether or not you're worthy to get into this one particular school? Is that fair? I would say no, it's not fair. But I would also say don't get caught up on that. The bigger issue is what's happening in all these middle and elementary schools, that children can't perform to a level to have the choice to go to any school that they want to. What is it that they can't read? What do you mean they're reading at a 3rd grade reading level? What do you mean they can't write? What do you mean they can't do the mathematics to demonstrate that they're proficient on any exam? And that's really the bottom line. I think we're getting a little distracted with the other piece, but you have a lot of schools out there that are not supporting students in a way that they can demonstrate that they're proficient in the most basic of English and math requirements. And that, to me, is the issue. But I sure do wish they had eliminated that test.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got to start wrapping up, DJ LeRoy.
Yes, I hear you. So you know what? I'd love to hear a closing comment from each of you. And like I said, NightWatchman, we might have to also bring them back, David's first 100 days. Okay? We might have to do that. So, closing thoughts, Dr. Johnson.
You're on mute.
Okay, hope is alive, and I think our communities, are going to be reinvigorated under this new administration.
Excellent, excellent. Dr. Mims.
I want us all to stay committed to the dream, keep our focus on our passion, and never let our critics define who we are.
Excellent, excellent. Dr. Jallow.
So I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel with such a wonderful group of folks, many who I have crossed paths with in the past. Just a little public announcement. The state of New York is in the process of revamping high school graduation requirements. They're calling it pathways, and they're asking for folks throughout the state to weigh in to tell the Board of Regents what should the pathways be for high school grad. This has the potential to transform education in this state as we know it, and our voices need to be part of what are all the multiple pathways that a child can go through to graduate with a high school diploma in this state. And I think it's important that our voices are heard and are part and parcel of that decision making. Other than that, I want to thank you and look forward to whatever happens next. And I wish David Banks all the best, all the best.
Beautiful. So, Miss Harper, my cuz, take us home. What are your closing thoughts?
I just want to say thank you to just a great panel, and for us to keep this communication and this discussion open amongst all educators. And I want to use something that I learned from someone on this panel, and it says, inspect what we expect.
Debra, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for the words that you talked about earlier.
Excellent. So, NightWatchman, take us home.
Well, first of all, a round of applause for our educators.
Thank you.
A job well done. We just wanted to give you your flowers while you're here, as they say. Special shout out to David Banks, who has shown himself to be one of the best educators in the country, and was the obvious choice, New York City Chancellor. And we look forward to supporting him in a monumental task he has, and knowing that he is up for the task. So you have been listening to a panel of tremendous educators on WHCR 90.3 FM Soul Lounge Primetime. You can always find us on Monday night, live on the radio at 7 p.m., live on YouTube and Facebook at 8 p.m. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening, and support education in New York City and the country. God bless us all.